What's up, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome into Shout, this special edition every week. Most weeks, we've been a little bit lacking the last couple of weeks, but this is three big questions. What we do is I come up with a question, Ryan comes up with a question, and then we go to a fan, one of our Shout Buffalo Bills insiders, who brings their own question into the show. This week, we're going to insider Nick. He's actually got three, so you're getting a bonus episode. We're going to do 5 questions. We're going to run through all of these things. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Excited about this. Yeah, last week with it being Christmas week and now New Year's, we slacked a little bit, but I'm glad we're back with it here and doing our 3 questions.
I'm glad too. And I'm always glad when I get over to Tops Friendly Markets where they'll do the cooking and you will be the true MVP. Visit shop.topsmarkets.com and elevate your food game with the great selection of custom cakes, desserts, pizzas, sandwiches, fresh fruit, cheese trays, fried chicken, and so much more. Save time and easily shop with the convenience of no fee pickup on all the game day deals. There are no service fees, no tips, just the best deals in town. Score great deals in time for kickoff at shop.topsmarkets.com. You start us off, Ryan Talbot. What is your one big question of the week?
Big question, a topic we've discussed before, but some new news in that area. Is James Cook about to get paid by the Bills?
Yeah, so interesting development today. So James Cook took to social media to talk about his Pro Bowl snub. Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, and Jonathan Taylor, the 3 AFC running back selections. Cook is an alternate. And his brother quote tweeted Cook's tweet, basically saying, like, keep your head down, the bag is coming. And everybody started kind of trying to figure out, what does this mean? I quote tweeted it with my own little eyes emojis because the bag usually means a payday, right? Like something coming up for James Cook. And this is something, he is not a first round draft pick. He's a second round pick. He's in year 3, meaning if he was a first round pick this offseason, we'd be talking or coming up on the deadline a week or two ago, whenever that was, we'd be talking about the 5th year option potentially being picked up. There is no 5th year option for James Cook. So this offseason could be an opportunity for the Bills to extend him long term. So what potentially could that look like? I mean, I don't know if James Cook is going to set the market at the position, but there's a chance if he goes to free agency after next season, has another similarly productive season, he could be making in the ballpark of $10 to $12 million per season, maybe a little bit more. And so I guess we'll start with your take on this, since it was your big question. What do you think is the route the Bills should take here?
Well, he's been very important to this team the last 2 years. Last year, obviously, with the all-purpose yards or the scrimmage yards, didn't have as many touchdowns, but you saw his importance. And then this year, he's up the touchdown total. He has the most rushing touchdowns in the league, and we've seen a more balanced offense from the Bills. And with that balanced offense, Josh Allen has cut down his turnovers significantly. The Bills have been more efficient moving the ball. They've been a more complete offense. So that speaks volumes to his importance. I've always been kind of a big camp, or I've been in the camp of you don't pay running backs big money, but he might be the circumstance in terms of the explosiveness and what he means to this offense. The Bills might be in a spot where they have to pay him. And 2 comments from Delvin Cook today. The first one, as you mentioned, just keep doing what you're doing and let the bag in a few weeks speak for itself. And then he followed up again, tweeting to his brother, generational wealth incoming. We good. Yes.
Well, generational wealth incoming could mean a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily have to mean like absolutely explosive numbers that I think a lot of fans, and look, we've talked about, fear in a running back contract. Like there's a way to get generational wealth with a pretty big deal, but one that yields James Cook what he gets what he wants, and also what the Bills want. The only way a contract extension is imminent here over the next month, like Dalvin Cook alludes to, is the Bills coming up with a contract extension, because he's not free to negotiate with other teams. So this does make some sense. I mean, they are about rewarding the guys that develop in their building. Spencer Brown is a great recent example of that. James Cook, to me, we're in this. I'm with you. Like I was in that camp of you never play a running back, draft a guy every 2 years, start the cycle again. But I've kind of lightened that stance a little bit on Cook, only because I think he's really important to what they do. He's a dual threat guy out of the backfield. I mean, we talk about the rushing totals. He's also had 300 yards and 2 receiving touchdowns this season.
Right.
He has his fingerprint on this offense in so many different ways. And I think the way that he's developed as a runner, I was listening to the Athletic Football Show today. They got into the MVP debate, and we'll talk a little bit about this on the show. And by the way, side point, listen, we're going to talk about the MVP. Like it's part of this time of the year. And when the team that we cover has a preeminent player in that conversation, it behooves us to have that conversation. So apologies if you're kind of tired of the MVP talk. I get it. I'm a little bit exhausted of it as well, but there's a lot of layers to this that we still continue to peel back. They were talking about that. But in talking about players that have surprised this season, Derek Klass and Robert Mays, they both mentioned James Cook as one of the players. Benford too, a couple other Bills. And the thing that they noted that was so impressive about him this year is how hard he's running, how he's finishing his runs. He's running through guys. This is something that I don't even think the Bills knew they were signing up for when they drafted him. I think the marriage between Cook, Aaron Cromer, and Joe Brady has been this perfect triangle. And then you throw Kelly Skipper as the kind of the guide of this whole thing. And what's working right now is working in a really big way. So I think if you could kind of figure out a way where you can get the number that makes him happy, but it doesn't absolutely destroy your cap situation, I think we're trending in a little bit of a shift in the NFL where teams are going to start thinking about paying running backs. And here's the big key for me. You pay a running back when it's meaningful to your offense. The Giants, it never made sense for them to bring back Saquon Barkley because their offense was an absolute catastrophe. It did make sense for the Philadelphia Eagles to pay Saquon Barkley because they were that guy away from being this version of their offense.
Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry with the Ravens, because the Titans, same thing, not in a situation where they were going to contend, but he has helped the Ravens well, I can't say get over the top. They're the 1 seed last year, but be a postseason team again, give them another threat or another layer. And even Joe Mixon, that team has dealt with a lot of injuries and been beat up. But as you said, we've seen this year the importance of a good running back and a good offense. So it's looking like potentially the Bills are seeing that as well and saying we should probably get on board with this with a much younger guy than those backs. Barkley's not that old, but the other two are getting a little longer in the tooth, so to speak. But get a young guy in that's finishing his runs. One thing I loved about Cook when they drafted him out of Georgia was he was kind of a part of a committee at Georgia. He didn't have a lot of tread off the tires, so to speak. So he comes into Buffalo, and now he's established himself as that main guy. Yes, they have Ray Davis, and Davis's role will expand. And Ty Johnson's a great third down back who sometimes has been more of like a second back in the system, but he's just been so good. And I think a lot of that has to do as well with how fresh his legs were coming out of college.
You look around the league at some of the big time contracts that have been signed. Obviously, total value, if you're looking at contract value, Josh Jacobs is at the top of the list at $48 million. Jonathan Taylor closely behind him at 42. McCaffrey, 38. Barkley, 37.5. Ramondre Stevenson, 36 million. So to me, it's like if you're in the Barkley range, because you figure like this is going to get reset. Miles Sanders at 25.4. Woof, right? Alvin Kamara, who re-signed a deal, I think, or maybe added a little bit onto his deal. The other good part about this is if they do a new deal for James Cook, you get like that 2 years buffer zone going in if you do it this offseason. So you're going to have his final year of his rookie deal cap hit, which will be probably fine. And then that 2026 cap hit, the first year of the new deal, usually Brandon Beane and NFL GMs can pull the strings a little bit and get that number to where they want it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the other part of it too. Brandon Beane's really good at how he builds these contracts and how money can get moved around and pushed around. And again, this is a younger back who you think still has quite a few good years left. So if this is the direction we're trending based on what Delvin Cook is putting out there, and the agency that I'm assuming represents both brothers also retweeted Delvin Cook. So maybe negotiations have been ongoing and they're getting close to a finish line.
All right, here's my big question. And we got Nick waiting in the bullpen. He's in the green room, if you will. So we'll be bringing him in shortly to get into his insider questions today. And a quick shout out, by the way, before we get to my question. Taron Johnson today was awarded or presented the Media Stand-Up Guy Award from the Buffalo Bills media contingent. Basically, it's given to the player that is most accessible to the media, somebody that's always willing to talk during the week, training camp, preseason, regular season, playoffs, win, loss, all those kinds of things. Mitch Morse won the inaugural award 2 years ago, Deion Dawkins last year, and congratulations to Taron Johnson. He's as good as it gets when it comes to just his demeanor, his accessibility, and I think fans really appreciate that.
Oh, absolutely, because it's not always easy to talk after certain games, and he's someone that's always willing to. So a great choice once again for by the media for some of the players on this Bills roster.
Okay, so let's get to my big question. Is the Pro Bowl snub a big deal? Like, because obviously you see James Cook very vocal about it, and rightfully so. I mean, he's had a great season. I tweeted it just now. The Joe Mixon over James Cook selection feels like a lifetime achievement more so than it does Mixon getting the nod over Cook for this singular season. Because I think Cook's been better. The production's been better. He's averaging more yards per carry. He's got more touchdowns, total rushing everywhere you look. His rushing success rate is considerably higher at 52% compared to 41% for Joe Mixon. So all the stats, all the measurables point towards James Cook. So, but in terms of it being a snub, should it be something that players take seriously? Is it something that it just does kind of feel like a popularity contest at times? Guys getting in sometimes, guys not getting in. How would you, I guess we can't really play this game because we're not NFL players, but how would you feel if you were quote unquote snubbed by an award that is handed out based on votes from players, coaches, and fans? All of those things are put into a pot and they try to come up with the list here.
If I were a player, I think I would actually, if I were snubbed the way James Cook was, leading the NFL in touchdowns, and as you mentioned, the efficiency numbers that he has over the Mixons and the Jonathan Taylors, I totally get that. I also think if you're not a household name yet and you're having a great season and you're not even listed as an alternate, that might mean a lot to you as a player. And Christian Benford comes to mind. As soon as I saw the alternates put out there, I said, this guy wasn't even a fifth alternate. It's feels like he's been one of the top corners in the league this year, not just the AFC. And for him not to be able to even have to be listed in that long list of alternates to me was insulting. So I do think it matters to the players. You and I, when we see the lists and things like that, you're like, these half the players don't even go to the games anymore. They don't care. And I think those are older players, obviously players that are in the Super Bowl. But there's a lot of guys that just pass over this game and you end up going pretty far down that list. But yeah, if you're a younger player like a James Cook, a younger player like a Christian Benford, I really do think it matters to them.
Yeah, and I think Deion Dawkins said something really interesting about Spencer Brown today, in that him being an alternate has him ahead of the curve for guys like Deion before him, who took years before they even got kind of that alternate status. It could take some time for the league to catch up. Maybe players around the league that you don't play every week. Maybe you're not on the radar. James Cook is about as quiet as it gets, right? Like right. Christian Benford, as quiet as it gets. They don't have that boisterous, outgoing personality where they're plastered across social media. I mean, Keon Coleman is an alternate. Doesn't that feel like a little bit like people know who he is more so than he's having the kind of season where you got to get him into the All-Star game as an alternate? I don't know. That just, so from the outside looking in, that could be more part of the process than somebody actually getting snubbed. More so just, I don't know if everybody knows how good some of these players are. Right. And that's not a knock on Keon either. Like he's deservedly there, but going back to the draft, he is very much on the radar of NFL fans, players, and coaches.
Yeah, you look at some of the players that get in and they are more vocal, and I'm not talking about just the Bills, just overall in general. So I'm sure that certainly plays into it. And it is a popularity contest. No knock on Dalton Kincaid, but I believe he was a fifth-team alternate, and he hasn't really had a Pro Bowl type of season. So maybe some of the carryover from his rookie year, maybe some coaches and players knowing what he can become factors into that. I'm not sure, but There's always a few head scratchers both ways in terms of who gets named and who doesn't.
All right, so those are our first two big questions. We got Nick, one of our insiders, waiting to come aboard. And like I mentioned a couple times in the show, if you ever want to be a part of this 3 big question segment, again, it's not every single insider every week, but we're going to try to roll through this thing and hopefully have as many as we can get that want to come on the show. You got to become an insider, and you can text 716-528-6727. It gives you a 2-week free trial to check it out, $3.99 a month after that. The Shout text line is brought to you by Carrie C. Byer, attorney with the law offices of Francis M. Leitra, located at 237 Main Street in Buffalo, New York. If you or someone you know is seriously injured, give them a call, 716-852-1234, or check out litrolaw.com. All right, going to Nick. We're bringing him in. He looks like he's driving. I'm a little bit nervous. Hopefully everything, we stay on the road. How you doing, buddy? What's up, Nick? How are you?
Good. How are you?
We are doing wonderful. And are you driving right now? Am I correct in that?
Good. Yeah, I'm almost home, so I'll have better internet in a second.
Oh, it's all good. Well, drive safe. That's all we really care about. All right. While you're driving there, why don't you let us know what your first question is? All right, so I'm going to take him out for a second. Nick, let get home. We'll bring you back in here in a quick second. We want to go next, Ryan, while we wait for Nick. As a matter of fact, we have his question, so maybe we can even start with one of his first questions.
That's actually great. Let's do number 3 from his list. I think he'd like to be in here for number 1 and number 2. Who are you picking from the NFC to be in the Super Bowl? And if not the Bills, from the AFC, who?
Ooh, that's a really good question. All right, let's start with in the NFC. We're going to learn a lot about these 2 elite contenders this week coming up here in the Lions and the Vikings. As we progress towards the playoffs, there's so much I like about the Vikings, right? Like, I like the defense. Brian Flores has his finger on the pulse. You have Kevin O'Connell, who I think has Sam Darnold playing this great brand of football. You have Justin Jefferson, a physical run game with Aaron Jones. There's so much to like about it. But it feels to me like the Vikings are like maybe a year away, right? Like, do you remember when the Lions kind of went on a little mini run last year and it ended before the Super Bowl? To me, that could be the Vikings this year. You have Philadelphia, who's always going to be in the mix, but I have some question marks there. As banged up as the Detroit Lions are, I think they're battle tested. I think they got a lot of experience last year. I think this offense is just so good in so many ways, even without David Montgomery. I'm going with the Lions to get to the Super Bowl. What about you?
Lions make a ton of sense. The only thing that would stop me from picking them would be the injuries. Maybe a show or two ago at Wingnuts, I did pick the Eagles as my NFC choice. I guess I'm going to stick with them. I still think they have enough talent on both sides of the ball. They're in better shape health-wise than a team like the Lions. But it wouldn't shock me if Detroit were the team from the NFC to make the Super Bowl, especially like you said, this offense, Ben Johnson, as creative as they come. I love all the wrinkles that they throw in. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at everything. The only thing that really concerns me about the Lions, minus the injuries as well, I'm starting to wonder if Dan Campbell is too aggressive at times, where he's leaving points on the field. There were a few times where he could have kicked a field goal and there were a turnover on downs. There's other times, though, where he converts for touchdowns. So there's such a thin, narrow margin of victory when it comes to these games, where I almost wonder if he's going to, play it wrong at some point. It could end up being costly for the team.
Yeah. What's up, Nick? How are you?
Sorry about that. I had to pick up my daughter from school.
Oh, no, it's totally good. I'm just glad you got home all safe. I was like, dude, you were, I've been in that spot a million times, like where I've been on a Zoom call and trying to drive at the same time. So it was stressing me out. So I'm glad. How's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. We're getting into your third question of the bunch. We'll let you start with the first one here in a second. I got one more thought on the AFC side of things. But how long have you been an insider now?
So I joined beginning of last year. So I've been, listening to you guys' podcasts pretty much, all the time in the car, out doing yard work or whatever, and really enjoy the talks and the information that I get from you guys all the time. So it's been good.
That's awesome. Well, we really appreciate you being a part of the Insider text line, and it's really for us been a way to connect with fans even better. Social media, obviously, there's just so much noise on all these different platforms.
All right.
This is such a direct line of communication. It's been really cool. Ryan, real quick before we move on to, I'll let Nick introduce his first two questions. The AFC side of things is really interesting because I think a lot of people are really pivoting towards Baltimore as like the big bad boogeyman in the AFC now, right? I still think it's the Chiefs. I think if the Bills don't go to the Super Bowl, the Chiefs hosting every single game that they play in the AFC playoffs and the way their offense is trending over the last couple of weeks, they're still the toughest team. And Chris Jones is going to basically get 3 weeks off before the divisional round. And I think that they're as dangerous as ever. I think Marquise Hollywood Brown coming back, McCole Hardman coming back, his practice window is opening. They're going to have their full allotment of weapons. I still think that's the toughest game, and I think that's still the best team until one of these teams beats them.
Yeah, like you said, if it's not the Bills, Chiefs get my vote as well. We talked recently about how Hollywood Brown has allowed Xavier Worthy to move into his spot. It's kind of helped Travis Kelce, it feels like, and him getting open a little bit easier. They have a lot of depth there. Noah Gray's made some plays this year as well. Isaiah Pacheco getting better each week. Obviously missed some time earlier this year with a more serious injury. So the weapons there, it makes me think that they are the biggest threat to the Bills in the AFC. As for the Ravens, playoff seeding can change this weekend depending on the outcome of a few games, but they don't have a walk in the park as of right now, the way it's slotted. If they end up going against the Los Angeles Chargers, and I know the Chargers come postseason time, they're usually a wreck. They get big leads and blow them. We saw that a few years ago, but Jim Harbaugh is going to have his guys ready to go, whether he's facing his brother or some other team. So there's a lot of talent in the AFC playoffs this year.
Who do you think, on that note, who do you think has the tougher matchup, that game or the Pittsburgh Steelers potentially, if they're probably going to face the Houston Texans? But which team do you think you'd rather face this time of year?
If you're the Bills or just in general?
Just in general. In general, who do you think's the tougher wild card matchup? I guess throw the Broncos in there too for the top.
No, I would go with the Chargers right now. The talent on offense, Justin Herbert can throw through any kind of the conditions out there. I like the way that they're playing. They can run the ball very well, just with J.K. Dobbins and company. So they have. I think that's the scariest team in terms of those wild card teams. Pittsburgh's kind of spiraling right now, 3 straight losses. Probably want to right the ship this weekend against Cincinnati if possible. And then in terms, the 7 seed, Denver's the favorite to win that spot, but they still have to win this game against Carson Wentz and company. And Bo Nix, as good as he's been at times, is still a rookie quarterback where I think you can kind of create some scenarios of things he hasn't seen yet.
All right, Nick. Show is yours.
Right.
What do you got for us, buddy?
All right. So my first question is who's the most essential player on the Bills for like a deep, playoff push, Super Bowl run that's not Josh Allen?
That's a great question. I'd want your take on it too, but for me, the first place I go is Greg Rousseau. You can make an argument for Von Miller. You can make an argument for Ed Oliver. But for me, it's Rousseau because I think if you're looking on the defensive side of the ball, the only guy that I see with like game-wrecking potential, and he's had these games going back to his rookie season. I mean, you remember, I think it was his first game against Kansas City when he had a sack in that game and he had the pass deflection. He intercepted it, found a way to make an impact. I think that was a night game in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. He's had a couple of marquee performances in big time moments over the course of his career. It's never been super consistent where you're seeing splash plays over the course of weeks and months. And I think that's what truly makes this team scary, is if they find that one guy that week in and week out, you're going to get that level of play out of him. And Rousseau, if you look at Baltimore, Ronnie Staley's been really good. They've gotten some good play at their tackle spots, but it's not something going into the year that everybody was raving about. The Chiefs at tackle, I mean, Joe Thuney's really settled things, but on the right side, that's still a huge question mark with Jawan Taylor. There's opportunities for Greg Rousseau to be a game wrecker, and I think they need him to take that next step. And we're talking about James Cook last segment about him getting a contract. To me, that's the way Greg Rousseau gets a contract this offseason. If he goes on the kind of playoff run that helps the Bills get to the Super Bowl. What do you think, Nick? And then we'll go to Ryan.
Sure. So my thinking was with the new offensive mentality this year where everybody eats, that, you could say Shakir, but, the way they've been passing the ball around, they can just go to somebody else. I was thinking defense as well. I was thinking Bernard, just because, behind him, who do you got? There's a drop off of talent, with him pairing up with either Milano or whoever else, ends up being in that role, whether it's Andreessen or whoever, that kind of tends to be, like a focal point to me of like the defense, of them trying to push, getting everyone lined up right, applying the pressures, filling in the right gaps. So that seemed very important to me, where he seems to really have gotten that down this year.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Great point. We saw how the defense fared without Bernard last year in that Chiefs game. So both of you, great points. I'm going to stick on the offense. I'm going to go with James Cook. It feels like a very James Cook-centric episode of Shout. But, there's going to be times where defenses are going to be playing the pass, and they're going to have light boxes. And that's when you need a guy like James Cook to be able to take the ball and break off and rip off those big chunks of yards, or take one to the house for a touchdown. And when the Bills are more balanced, when they can run the ball and throw the ball, that makes them more dangerous. It allows the play action pass to open up. Defenses can't necessarily just try to take Josh Allen out of the game alone. So for me, if they want to make this deep playoff run, they might have to get into some shootouts based on some of the outcomes we've seen from this defense in the last month and a half. You need James Cook to be up there right with Josh Allen in terms of how he fares on a game-by-game basis.
Good stuff. Let's move on to your next question, Nick. Why don't you read that one out for us?
Sure. So this one was kind of based off of the MVP conversation, and then also both of your academic backgrounds of, if you had a grading rubric for the MVP, what would it be? Because it seems like the conversation and people's opinions are weighing more into it than they should be. And it doesn't seem like there's any sort of like set criteria that people really are judging the MVP race on.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I got a text today from my uncle. And I'm sure this is a conversation that's happening on social media. I haven't really gotten my the pulse of it today, but you see the Pro Bowl rosters come out for all of these teams, and the Baltimore Ravens getting 9 Pro Bowlers compared to the Bills 2. And you start to wonder, like, okay, like there's obviously 9 guys on the Ravens that are literally put in the same bucket in terms of the elite of the league. And the Bills get 2. And kind of in a lot of ways, a lot of these players feel like afterthoughts. And I almost feel like that's a criteria for Josh in its own right, because, when you don't have the kind of supporting cast that I feel like Baltimore has had, that pushes the conversation or skews the weight towards Josh Allen's side, in my opinion. And, I mentioned the Athletic Football Show. They did a good job on their conversation about this, really diving on the analytical numbers, like the advanced metrics. When you're talking about EPA, some of the separation numbers, how efficient Josh Allen has been as a runner this year compared to Lamar Jackson, something that we're not talking a lot about this year. The interceptions are basically the same. 4 for Lamar, 6 for Allen, right? They've both been really careful with the football. But it's more than double the amount of fumbles for Lamar Jackson to Josh Allen. That's been a big part of his game for years. So, listen, Lamar Jackson, if we're talking just purely statistically, he's got Josh Allen beat in almost every single category. But if we're talking about who has the better offense in terms of star power, I think you can make the argument for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think the Pro Bowl selection process kind of tells that story as well, Ryan.
Yeah, you look at some of the narratives that I feel like Ravens fans are pushing is that, well, the Bills have a better O-line. Well, the Ravens have 2 O-line in the game named as starters. They have a wide receiver in Zay Jones. They have Derrick Henry, who has really been outstanding this season. Then obviously Lamar Jackson. So of the 9, 5 right there on offense, where Josh has his left tackle, but that's it in terms of the starters. So it does show that there has been a difference between the overall talent on each side. And, we've always said we're not trying to bash the talent that Buffalo has. They do have a very, very good back, if not great back, in James Cook, and they have some really solid receivers, a young and emerging guy like Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, who's done great things this year. And their line's been tremendous, but the talent differential's there. And it's, in terms of the rubric question, I don't know how you could necessarily prove this, but to me, it comes down to if you took both players off of their respective teams, how many wins would they have? And you look at this Buffalo roster and the way that Allen has had to take over some games and play Superman at times. I feel like this team overall, their win-loss record would be very much different than their current 13-3 record. Arizona week 1, they needed Allen to really help them come back and win that game. I know they lost to the Rams, but Allen almost single-handedly brought them back in that. The shootout against the Lions, winning that. So, I feel like if you take Lamar off of the Ravens, that's still a team that's probably close to pushing 500 in terms of their overall record, just because of how good Derrick Henry is. We've seen it before where they almost won a playoff game with Snoop Huntley a few years ago against the Cincinnati Bengals. So they've been there. They've been on the threshold. They found ways to win with that defense too. A lot of playmakers there in the way and the style that they play. So to me, it just comes down to if you remove both players from the team, which team would be in worse shape, and it would be Buffalo without a doubt.
All right, Nick, final thought, buddy. Close us down here.
So I've been, watching the team all year, and it seems like this year, this team is way different than years in the past, from the coaching to the equipment guys to the players. Like everybody seems to be bought into the ideology, don't have any distractions, like we have had in years past. And it really seemed a lot more focused, which is good, and everyone understands their role, what they need to do. You have guys like stepping up for one another, whether it's on the play, like Mac Hollins, like, he's not even in the play, but he's still like celebrating with the guys, or he's going down and blocking and putting in the extra effort, where we haven't really seen that this year. So I'm really looking forward to the playoffs this year, and really hoping that they can, go a lot further than they have in the past, because it's been some heartbreakers lately.
Nick, this was awesome stuff, man. Thank you so much for participating in it today, sending in the
problem.
questions, being an insider. We really appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Ryan. I'll give you the secondary final word here before we get out of here.
Final word, stick with us, Bills fans. We will have our preview show. I know the game doesn't have a lot of meaning on Sunday, but still need to talk about that matchup against the Patriots as we wrap up the regular season and get ready and ramped up for some wild card football.
Oh, man, it's almost here. I can't believe the playoffs are finally right on the doorstep here. Get ready for Slider Sunday this weekend, your way with King's Hawaiian at Tops Friendly Markets. Every Sunday is an opportunity to enjoy delicious sliders made your way, and now you can win big while doing it. Vote for your favorite slider weekly for a chance to win tickets to the big game. Grab your favorite King's Hawaiian products from Tops and craft the ultimate sliders to make your Sunday even more special. Visit shop.topsmarkets.com/sliders Sunday. Get yourself a great deal. All right, everybody, take care. We'll see you tomorrow.